In Scream 6, during the scene where Mindy and Kirby discuss their favorite horror movies, they both agree that Psycho 2 is underrated. This is just one of 64 horror movies referenced in Scream 6, but it has an even deeper connection to the plot, as not only is the premise of Psycho 2 about two families ultimately seeking revenge on one another, one of them even having the same last name, Loomis, but both films also feature characters getting an identical death scene by way of being stabbed in the mouth. Stick around to the end of the video to find out even more trivia, including all of the character costumes you might have missed on the subway car, as we go over every single horror movie referenced in this year's franchise expanding sequel, Scream 6. What is up, Scream team? Zach Cherry here, and if you've ever been interested in tallying up all of the horror movies referenced in the Scream franchise, not just mentioned by its characters, but also in its visual and thematic correlations, then this is the place for you, and you should subscribe to the channel with those notification alerts turned on. That way, you can stay up to date with all sorts of horror and Scream-related content, including the other episodes of this series, where we went over all of the horror movie references in the 5 previous films of the franchise. To date, Scream 6 is the biggest entry in terms of these number of references, mostly due to the subway scene, so there's probably a chance that I missed a few of the lesser-known properties. With that said, feel free to comment down below if you think there's anything I might have skipped over, but just keep in mind that we're only looking for references to other horror movies. So any little Easter eggs pertaining to music, television, podcasts, and YouTube will sadly not be included on this chart. Because if we do include them, then I'm gonna have to point out the fact that Diet Cherry Coke Girl is a direct reference to me, Zach Cherry. Not to mention that the Kirsch family name is of German origin, conspicuously translating to the word cherry, and nobody wants to be affiliated with those goons, least of all myself. With that said, the meta commentary of the Scream sequels is constantly paying homage to itself, so we'll automatically add the first 5 movies to the list as well, since there are once again many instances where certain scenes and set pieces from the franchise are referenced. However, I'm just going to focus on the more obscure Easter eggs that are found inside the shrine, as this video is going to be dense enough as it is, without pointing out all the similarities between sequels. Starting with the film's marketing though, the Scream 6 cast poster became a point of contention for a lot of fans, as its white background with the characters shown inside the silhouette of Ghostface's tasseled robe was a major visual departure from the cast posters of the past. However, there is a very intentional reason for this design, as it's a subtle reference to the poster art for 2014's The Babadook, which was notably mentioned in Scream 5 as being Tara's favorite scary movie. In addition to that, several Scream 6 promotional spots, including the official teaser trailer, also featured this infamous soundbite. This sound was created by composer Harry Manfredini for the original Friday the 13th in 1980, where it then went on to become a staple of its franchise, so let's go ahead and add both of those movies to the chart. When Scream 6 starts proper, we're introduced to a young woman named Laura, who we discover is a film professor at Blackmore University, which is a New York City school where the majority of the film's characters attend. It isn't mentioned in the dialogue, but the cast credits at the end of the movie confirm that Laura's surname is Crane, which is a name shared most notably with Janet Leigh's character in Psycho, where, very much like Laura, Marion Crane also happens to be the first casualty of her movie. There isn't much in the way of references during the conversation between Laura and Jason over the phone, other than the fact that it's mentioned that the college course she teaches is on the subject of 20th century slashers. This comes back in a roundabout way, however, when she soon finds herself outside, where she wanders alone into a dark alley across the street. Although this isn't referenced directly, this kill plays out almost identically to one from 1997's I Know What You Did Last Summer, where a character finds herself in a similar predicament, only to momentarily hesitate when she's startled by the sounds of people on the street, giving her pursuer the opportunity to move in for the kill. Incidentally, the character in question was played by Sarah Michelle Gellar, who previously appeared in Scream 2 playing Omega Beta Zeta sorority member Cece Cooper, which, as we find out later, is the same sorority that Tara plans on rushing. Speaking of Tara, her pirate Halloween costume, as well as her friends who are dressed up as a teddy bear and a soldier, is a reference to the movie VHS, which was an anthology horror film released in 2012. The referenced segment, entitled 10/31/98, was produced and directed by Scream 6's creative team Radio Silence, in which they also starred in, playing characters who wore the same ensemble of Halloween costumes. After this, when Jason arrives at the apartment he shares with Greg, we see a plethora of movie posters hanging on the wall, shelves, which includes the already mentioned Psycho, but also another Hitchcock classic with 1958's Vertigo, both of which were displayed in the Meeks' living room as seen in Scream 2022. We also get to see posters for the fictional Stab movies, which includes the original hanging over top the TV in the living room, as well as Stabs 3, 4, and 5, which are displayed in a makeshift shrine inside the closet, where we can also see the same version of the Ghostface costume that was handed out to the guests who attended the Stab premiere in Scream 2. However, besides their obsession with Hitchcock and Stab, all of the other posters in their apartment are from the early 20th century, including either German expressionist horror with Nosferatu, The Golem, and Metropolis, or Universal classic monsters with Dracula, and then two separate posters for the Phantom of the Opera. There are other posters shown in either the living room or down the bedroom hallway, but they're unfortunately not fully visible, so if anyone has any idea what these movies are, feel free to chime in. Otherwise, that just gives us 6 more movies to officially add to the chart. We also see a poster for a podcast called The Last Podcast on the Left, and even though we're not including podcasts as part of the references here, this is in and of itself an homage to Wes Craven's directorial debut with 1972's The Last House on the Left, which tells the story of a mother and father who take revenge on a gang of fugitives who take refuge in their home after murdering their daughter on her 17th birthday. We can also see that Jason is wearing a t-shirt with the logo for the movie Quattro Mosche di Velluto Grigio, which is also known for its English translated title, Four Flies on Grey Velvet, a 1971 Italian giallo, written and directed by Dario Argento. It makes sense that Jason would be wearing this shirt, as he does comment on how he wrote a giallo paper for which Professor Crane gave him a C-, and is later on identified by Mindy as
that chode from our film studies class, the one obsessed with Argento.
However, this reference is worked into the movie even further, as both Four Flies and Scream 6 feature similar compositional set pieces that take place in a public park, a crowded subway car, as well as a very dilapidated and seemingly abandoned theater. Jason is also a Ghostface killer who is murdered by a second Ghostface killer in the midst of his own plot, which bears a similarity to another Argento film with 1982's Tenebrae, a somewhat meta precursor to Scream, as it tells the story of a crime fiction novelist who becomes the central target of a killer who commits murders in real life based on the exact same methods as written in the author's book, also called Tenebrae. The opening credits of the movie is even homaged towards the end of Scream 6, as it matches the end credits of Richie's fan film that we see on the projector inside the shrine. When Jason goes to sit down, the scene playing on the TV is from the movie Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, which is a direct correlation to Scream 6, as both movies are notable for sending their iconic killers to wreak havoc on the big city. Ironically, this also makes Jason a killer who's watching another killer named Jason on the screen, which is nothing new for the franchise, but this does segue into another reference to Friday the 13th, as Jason's discovery of Greg's dismembered body in the fridge is an homage to the opening scene of Friday the 13th Part 2. Released in 1981, this movie sees original final girl Alice Hardy find the head of Pamela Voorhees inside her fridge, before Jason himself sneaks up to stab her from behind, in order to get revenge on her for killing his mother in the previous installment. As this is also the first time we see the aged Ghostface mask, which we later find out is the same one worn by Billy Loomis in the original, this can only be a reference to Halloween 2018, in which characters procure the mask that Michael Myers had originally worn in 1978, where it appeared to be cracked and discolored after years of sitting in an evidence locker before Michael reclaimed it to go on his 40th anniversary killing spree. When we're reintroduced to Sam Carpenter, she's in the middle of a therapy session with Dr. Stone, who appears to be an avid fan of horror paraphernalia. Mainly among his collectible figures are a series of the characters from the Addams Family, and while I'm not going to include this as a movie reference on the chart, as these seem to be based off of the original character designs as illustrated by cartoonist Charles Addams, it is worth mentioning that in the interim between filming Scream 6 and its eventual release date, Jenna Ortega, who plays Tara, did gain widespread notoriety for her depiction of Wednesday Addams in the Netflix adapted series. We even see a party guest later on who's dressed as the character. Dr. Stone also has collectible figures of Leatherface, wearing his iconic kill mask and Pretty Lady mask, both seen in the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 1974, as well as a version of Pennywise from 2017's It, and Annabelle, who made her first appearance in 2013's The Conjuring. So let's go ahead and add all of those movies to the chart as well. Ironically, Dr. Stone also has a Ghostface figure, which makes it all the more bizarre that he wouldn't have known who Sam was, considering he's obviously a fan of the Stab movies. We then get a reference to the original Halloween from 1978, when Sam shows Dr. Stone the Woodsboro Truther Reddit page, where a user makes the correlation that if Sam went by her father's surname, she would be called Sam Loomis, who was Michael Myers' psychiatrist who had first turned up in the franchise, played by Donald Pleasance. In addition to that, Sam Loomis was also a character featured in the original Psycho, meaning that the character name of Sam Loomis has now appeared in 3 different generations of horror movie franchises. The Reddit page also shows us a picture of Richie Kirsch wearing a flower wreath on his head with the user proclaiming his innocence. Although this is just a funny picture in general, it is likely a reference to Midsommar, which was a 2019 folk horror movie from director Ari Aster, in which a group of Americans travel to Sweden, where they become sacrifices to a pagan cult, who are all seen wearing a similar flower wreath. When Sam returns to her apartment, the movie hits a very similar beat to 1998's I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, where very much like Jennifer Love Hewitt's character, we can see that Sam takes the same precautions when it comes to her home security. And if this reference seems a little too general for you, consider the fact that both movies featured a killer hellbent on revenge who enlisted the help of their children to go undercover as a member of their target's friend group. We also get another possible reference to Halloween when Quinn's boyfriend, who's named Paul, or Paul 2.0 according to the credits, exists merely as a disembodied voice that we only ever hear coming from the other room. In the 1978 film, Paul was the name of Annie Brackett's boyfriend, who was never physically seen on screen, but was voiced by director John Carpenter as heard several times over the phone.
Hello. Hi, Annie. Oh, hi, Paul.
Speaking of Annie Brackett, Sam's neighbor/boyfriend Danny from across the alley is also given the surname of Brackett, once again according to the end credits. And the gimmick of the two watching each other throughout the movie is a reference to another Alfred Hitchcock classic with 1954's Rear Window, in which a professional photographer witnesses a murder while spying on his neighbors after being confined to a wheelchair. It's also here where we find out that Tara and company went to a fraternity party at the OKB house, which are the Greek letters that stand for Omega Kappa Beta, which was the fraternity that Derek Feldman was a member of in Scream 2. He had even gifted Sydney a necklace with the letters in question, which she can be seen wearing as late into the franchise as Scream 3. It's at this party where we're first introduced to Mindy's girlfriend Annika, where just like Laura and Danny, we can also glean from the cast credits at the end that her last name is Kyoko. This name is a reference to the 2002 Japanese horror film Ju-on the Grudge, which was also remade 2 years later for American audiences, in which Kyoko is the name of the vengeful spirit who kills anyone who enters the cursed home where she was murdered by her jealous husband. We then get a glimpse of one guest who is wearing a white jersey with the number 10 on it, which is a reference to the character Glenn Lance, who was Nancy Thompson's boyfriend in Wes Craven's original A Nightmare on Elm Street, released in 1984. That's basically all there is for costume references in this scene, except for Ethan, whose homemade ensemble is a reference to the 2007 indie horror film Murder Party, in which the lead character wears a similar night costume made out of cardboard, where he attends a party thrown by a group of deranged art students who plan to murder him and present his death as a piece of artwork in order to receive a grant. We don't really get too many more references for a while, at least from what I can find, but fast forwarding to Sam and Tara's attack, the moving truck that is parked across the street from the bodega has the words "Ready or Not" printed on the side. Although you really can't see it clearly at any point in the movie, this behind the scenes photo shows us that it was meant as a reference to Radio Silence's 2019 horror film of the same name, which starred Samara Weaving, who did indeed play Laura Crane in this movie's opening scene. We then get a reference to Steven Spielberg's Jurassic Park, released in 1993, and although I'm hesitant to categorize this as horror, I feel that it's horror adjacent enough, especially with the scene that's being referenced, as Sam and Tara's crawl through the bodega is horrifyingly reminiscent of Lex and Tim evading the velociraptors when they're cornered by them inside the park facility kitchen. Jumping ahead again, when we check back in with Dr. Stone, he's watching the 1956 version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, in which a small-town doctor discovers that the population of his community is being replaced by emotionless alien duplicates. We follow this down the hallway to what I would absolutely love to include as a reference to Disney's 101 Dalmatians, with Ghostface's silhouette silhouette in the glass doorway, being very reminiscent of Cruella de Vil's. However, as much as Disney villains are just as iconic as horror movie slashers, and probably terrified us all when we were younger, I can't in good conscience include an animated kids film on this chart.
I prefer animated films and musicals.
After Ghostface makes their way inside and locates Dr. Stone's files, we see a folder for a patient with the name Jupiter Mars. This is a reference to another Wes Craven film with 1977's The Hills Have Eyes, in which a vacationing family's car breaks down in the middle of the desert, where they're soon targeted by a group of savage cannibals, two of which have the names Jupiter and Mars. This then segues to the scene with Mindy standing on her soapbox in the park, and you would think there would be a lot more references here since this is the proverbial imparting of the rules lesson segment, but we only get a small handful when Mindy declares that main characters aren't safe, as several horror franchises from the past have employed the method of killing off its star. Examples cited are Nancy Thompson in A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors, Ellen Ripley in Alien 3, released 1992, Laurie Strode in Halloween Resurrection, released 2002, Jigsaw, aka John Kramer in Saw 3, released 2006, and most recently, Sally Hardesty in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022. Now, just zipping by here because there isn't really much to cover until the shrine, we're shown on Kirby's picture board of the past killers that Mrs. Loomis, who was only ever referred to by either that name or Debbie Salt, actually has the first name, Nancy. This information was present in the original script for Scream 2, while never making it into the movie. However, it acts as an homage to the actress of the same name, who had played the already mentioned Annie Brackett in Halloween. Further to that, this could also be a reference to Mrs. Voorhees, the inaugural killer of the Friday the 13th franchise, as it wasn't until 1984's The Final Chapter where we first learned her full name was Pamela Voorhees after seeing it inscribed on the character's headstone. In the next scene, during the big ladder escape, this particular set piece is very reminiscent of one used in the 1993 crime thriller Judgment Night. And although it probably doesn't classify as horror, it's still worth mentioning that Mason Gooding's father, Cuba Gooding Jr., performed this same feat 30 years earlier, which kind of makes it a missed opportunity that his son wasn't able to make the same crawl across the alleyway himself. In addition to that, a similar scene also takes place in the 2016 thriller Nerve, and although it's unfortunately also not a horror movie, it featured our former Ghostface killer actress Emma Roberts, so I would find it hard to believe if one or both of these movies wasn't the inspiration to replicate this set piece in Scream 6. We definitely do get a horror movie reference in the next scene, however, as Ethan shows up the following morning wearing the exact same outfit as the character of Radish from Final Exam, a 1981 slasher film set on a college campus where a mysterious killer targets a slew of students in the midst of finals week. The character in question was said to be the inspiration for Randy in the original Scream, with the movie even being name dropped by him in his phone call scene in Scream 2, but it's very apparent that the creatives behind Scream 6 were trying to emulate his appearance, as both Radish and Ethan are portrayed as being the shy, dorky members of their friend group. When we arrive at the shrine, there's graffiti on the wall outside the door that asks, "Wanna play a game?" And although this exact line has never been posed as a question in this franchise, as it was actually a statement made by the killer to Casey Becker, "I wanna play a game," it is the same line that was delivered by Jigsaw through Billy the Puppet in the original Saw, so I'll go ahead and add the 2004 movie to the chart. Speaking of the Saw franchise, the inclusion of the shrine is very similar to the 2017 prequel-sequel hybrid, Jigsaw, in which one of the characters has fashioned their own warehouse space as a museum of replicas for many of John Kramer's death traps that had been used throughout the various Saw movies. But now this brings us to Flashback City, so just to keep things a little more streamlined, let's go over the items in the shrine in chronological order by film. However, let's start with the Ghostface robes, which, going in order from left to right, would be Charlie, Jill, Amber, Richie, Billy in the glass encasement in the center, Stu, Nancy, Mickey, and Roman, whose bullet-ridden robe also includes the bulletproof vest he wore underneath it. Now, from Scream 96, there's Steve Orth's Letterman jacket and duct tape that was covering his mouth in the opening scene, as well as the rope swing that was used to hang Casey Becker, and the knife which disemboweled her body. There's Kenny Brown's top story news jacket and camera, which Chad later uses to fight back against Ghostface. There's also the separate micro camera that was planted by Gale Weathers, which broadcasts the party to the news van on a 30-second delay. There's the pair of scissors, which Principal Arthur Himbry used to cut up the expelled student's ghost face mask, as well as the Woodsboro High yearbook and the rope that was used to hang him from the football field's goalpost, even though it was never shown to us in the movie. There's Randy Meeks's Bradley Video Store employee uniform, which is identified specifically by Mindy. There's the top and skirt that Tatum Riley wore to the fateful party at 261 Turner Lane, as well as the panel of garage, which includes the pet door where she tried to escape. There's Stu Macher's robe he wore during the party, as well as his knife in the glass display case behind it, and also his family's TV, which Sidney infamously dropped on his head during the climax of the movie. Beside that, we have Billy Loomis's blood and corn syrup stained white t-shirt, and then just at the edge of the stage, we can see the umbrella that Sidney used to attack him with. And then of course the knife he uses throughout the finale, which is housed separately next to his Ghostface robe in the glass encasement. From Scream 2, there's an Omega Beta Zeta t-shirt with the sorority's letters on it, as well as the translucent house phone which Cece had picked up before being attacked by Ghostface. We also have Mickey's handheld camcorder on display, which he could be seen carrying throughout the movie, and then in a separate case we can see a Windsor College sweater with the school's emblem on it, as well as the Agamemnon mask, which was worn by several students participating in the Fall of Troy stage production. We can also see from the same play the giant stage prop that Derek had been tied to during the climax, along with the mask the fraternity brothers used to cover his face, and then right next to that is the poster for the play, which Sidney also had on display in her house in Scream 3. There's Nancy Loomis's white pantsuit she was wearing when she revealed herself to be the killer, and also the cop's gun, which was ultimately used to kill both her and Mickey. From Scream 3, we can see along the right-hand side wall as we walk into the shrine a banner for Cotton Weary's syndicated talk show, as well from the reverse view, a display for the golf club which Christine Hamilton used to attack him when she mistakenly thought he was the killer. There's a display case featuring the Stab 3 clapperboard, along with a film reel and official movie screenplay, the giant green ghost face mask that was seen on display in the Sunrise Studios office where Sarah Darling was killed, and then another display case with murderous implements recovered from Jennifer Jolie's house, including the frying pan that knocked out Stephen Stone, the charred and melted fax machine, and the lighter from her kitchen, which ended up igniting the gas that led to Tom Prince's death. Next to Randy's mannequin, there appears to be a case holding the videotape that Martha brought to the Sunrise Studios backlot. Hanging above the entrance is the happy birthday banner for Roman's party, which was displayed at John Milton's mansion during the final act. We've also got another display case with the high-tech modulator that could mimic all of the characters' voices and cadences, along with Mark Kincaid's gun that was used to shoot Roman in the head, and in the same case as the umbrella from the original Scream, we can also see the ice pick which Sidney used to stab Roman in the back and chest. From Scream 4, we can see a promotional poster for Sidney's self-help book, Out of Darkness, which was on display in the Woodsboro bookshop. There's also a case towards the entrance of the shrine that has red party cups that were seen at the Stabathon, along with an iPhone that could have belonged to Kirby, Trevor, Jill, or Charlie, as well as the knife that Kirby was stabbed with. We also have right behind that the hospital defibrillator that Sidney used to shock Jill in the film's climax, and then we have mannequins wearing the clothing of several of the Scream 4 characters, including Charlie Walker's white button-down shirt with the bloodstains from where he was stabbed in the heart, Olivia Morris's bloodied up and tattered shirt that she was disemboweled in, Deputy Anthony Perkins's uniform, which you can tell is his from the blood stain down the front side, Trevor Sheldon's outfit with the bloodied pants from where he was shot in the genitals. Barely out of sight, we can also make out the head of Robbie Mercer, wearing his video recording headset, which is shown more clearly in this behind-the-scenes footage. And finally, for mannequins, we have Jill Roberts with the blue plaid shirt she can be seen wearing throughout the film's third act. From Scream 2022, there's not a whole lot, but we do have the Woodsboro High School flag, which was first seen in the franchise when we met the students out on the park benches. We also have a case dedicated to Dewey Riley, which displays his sheriff's badge along with his revolver, which were both accounted for when we visited him in his trailer. And then in the case right next to that, we have the two knives that Amber Freeman used to kill him by stabbing him in both the back and the stomach. From there, we also have another case that's designated to all of Gale's books, except for the most recent one, which includes wrongly Accused, based on the Maureen Prescott murder story, The Woodsboro Murders, based on the events of Scream '96, College Terror, based on the events of Scream 2, Hollywood Horror, based on the events of Scream 3, and then fictional stories she wrote entitled Knife of Doom, Clock of Doom, Knife of the Hunter, Ghostface Returns, and Stabbed in the Back, most of which appear to have been adapted into the many Stab sequels. And lastly, and certainly least of all, we have a display designated to the Stab franchise, with the earlier seen Ghostface costume packaging, a promotional t-shirt for the Stabathon event, the Blu-ray box set, which we had seen previously as part of the Meeks' movie collection, and then sneak preview tickets for the original Stab premiere, which were shown during the opening scene of Scream 2. Now, moving along, we get to the moment where Mindy and Kirby test their horror movie fandom, and while we already covered the reference to Psycho 2, they also both agree that the original Nightmare on Elm Street is the best of its franchise. However, they're not so agreeable when it comes to Friday the 13th, as Mindy picks part 2 as her favorite, while Kirby opts for the final chapter, adding that her childhood crush on Corey Feldman helps sway the decision. They also mention 1992's Candyman, as well as its 2021 reboot of the same name, as being the best movies in the franchise about the hook-handed urban legend boogeyman, who is summoned to appear when you repeat his name 5 times in the mirror. So let's go ahead and add all those titles as well. Not that it really matters at this point, but we do see more Stab posters in the theater lobby, including the remaining ones we haven't seen yet, with Stab 2, Stab 6, Stab 7, and then Stab 2021, which notoriously featured a mask upgrade with the Chrome Face killer, who also traded in his knife for much heavier artillery. That actually sounds kind of familiar. Anyway, there's another stretch of the movie here without any horror references, save for some blatant callbacks, like Randy being killed in a van in broad daylight, Ethan eating Cheetos as an homage to Kenny from the original, and then being reminded of the tried and true method to successfully killing Ghostface.
What? You have to shoot them in the head. They always come back.
That's why I'm gonna shoot you in the core forehead.
When we do get to Gale's big scene, however, there is a moment where she struggles to get her gun, which was actually an unused holdover from the script for Scream 2022, where Wes was being pursued by the killer inside his house, and trying to remember the combination to his mom's safe, only he wasn't able to figure it out as fast as Gale does. It's also in this scene where we see Gale's new book, Requel, Terror Returns to Woodsboro, as that's what she used to smack the killer with. But this will then bring us to reference City on the subway car, so let's break this one down very carefully. Starting with their entrance into the station, if we listen closely, we can hear the sound of people chanting in the background, "Evil dies tonight."
Much less scary than a serial killer movie theater.
For fans of the Halloween franchise, you'll recognize this as an obvious reference to 2021's Halloween Kills, in which a Haddonfield vigilante mob takes the law into their own hands, often heard repeating the exact same line.
Evil dies tonight!
Now, moving on to the costumes, I want people to try and have an open mind here, because a lot of these costume references aren't exactly 100% accurate. However, this was an intentional artistic decision made by Scream 6's costume designer Avery Plews, who said that her goal with creating the look for these extras was that their outfits were going to have a very homemade quality to them, as it felt more realistic that people would put together their own Halloween costumes. In addition to that, she also said that she wanted to include as many Wes Craven film references as possible. So I did my best to scan every frame in order to make any sort of correlation, and based on these specific references that she cited, these are the ones I was able to find. First up is Freddy Krueger, who can be seen standing next to one of the ghost faces on Sam's train, as well as Sadie from The Last House on the Left, who's shown getting off the train when they arrive at the second stop. We later on see several people dressed up as the Hittites from the film Deadly Blessing. They can be seen leaving the station at the same time as the pushy ghost face. And then on Mindy's train, we can see Daddy from The People Under the Stairs, who's standing right behind Ethan, Horace Pinker, the main villain from Shocker, dressed in his orange prison jumpsuit, as well as a character from the movie named Allison, who is the blood-soaked woman standing on the platform when Ethan helps Mindy off of the train. Altogether, that gives us 3 additional Wes Craven movies to add here, but Plews also noted in an interview with Variety that there were costumes for Samantha Pringle from Deadly Friend, as well as Preacher Polly and Detective Veter from Vampire in Brooklyn, none of which I was able to identify. In addition to the Wes Craven specific references, we also get a slew slew of other ones, most notably Michael Myers, whose mask appears on a few different passengers. We also have Pinhead, aka the Hell Priest or lead Cenobite from the Hellraiser franchise, first appearing in the 1987 Clive Barker original. We also see a woman who appears to be dressed as Sherry from Stab 6. Another costumer appears as Grace Ladomas, Samara Weaving's bride character from the previously mentioned Ready or Not. We've also got a couple dressed as Chucky and Tiffany from the Child's Play franchise, Tara's favorite, the Babadook, standing right behind the group, and various people dressed as the Tethered from Jordan Peele's Us, with one of them specifically donning the mask worn by the character Pluto. We can also see a Jason Voorhees, Georgie with his red balloon from It, Magenta and Columbia from the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and the previously mentioned Kayoko Sakai from Ju-on the Grudge. There's Melanie Daniels from Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds, the Grady sisters from The Shining, John Trent from In the Mouth of Madness, who appears with the crosses drawn all over his face, Daniel Robitaille, aka Candyman, shown with bees covering the side of his face, and then who I can only assume is Ash Williams, who is the lead protagonist, played by Bruce Campbell in many of the Evil Dead movies. There's Sean Riley from Shaun of the Dead, dressed in his Foray Electric salesman uniform, Danny Ardor from Midsommar, dressed in her May Queen flower coat, Billy the Puppet from the Saw franchise, and then only visible in the Blu-ray featurette are Pazuzu-possessed Reagan McNeil from 1973's The Exorcist, as well as Leatherface from the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, seen here wearing the Pretty Lady mask. As some of these costumes are general to their franchises, I'll try to be a little more specific and match them as closely as possible to the movies they appear in. So for Jason Voorhees, I'll say this resembles his appearance in 1982's Friday the 13th Part 3, Chucky and Tiffany from 1998's Bride of Chucky, and Ash Williams with the straps and outfit he can be seen wearing from 1987's Evil Dead 2. With all the other references, that also gives us 8 more movies to add to the chart, but I did want to mention that it has been said that the Brandon James mask from the Scream TV series is also in this scene. Unfortunately, however, this is just one that I still haven't been able to find, so this might have just been something that got cut in editing. There's also a werewolf mask that people have attributed to being Peach Fuzz from the movie Creep, but if you take a look at the Fun World website, the company that also produces the Ghostface mask, this shows up there as just another one of their generic monster costumes. Now, we're basically in the home stretch here, so there's just a few more things to quickly go over. Firstly, there's a reference to Scream 3's Jennifer Jolie on the movie theater's marquee, displaying that the last event to be held before the theater shut down was a retrospective marathon of her film career. As mentioned previously, the Kirsch family scheme is very similar to the Willises from 1998's I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. Ethan and Tara's exchange of expletives matches the same one between Roman and Sydney in Scream 3, and like I had pointed out at the top of the video, Tara stabbing Ethan in the mouth is a direct homage to Lila Loomis's death in Psycho 2. We also get another reference to Ready or Not, as the dolly shot of Sam and Tara sitting at the edge of the stage is a compositional recreation from the end of that movie too, even including the imagery of the flames blazing directly behind them. Finally, and I know that this one is a bit of a stretch, but the last scene of Scream 6 shows our characters being tended to by police and paramedics on a cold and gloomy November 1st morning. As this is identical to the ending of the original Halloween sequel, I figured we may as well close off the Scream 6 references with one more addition in 1981's Halloween 2, where Laurie Strode could also be seen loaded into an ambulance before being driven off into the film's end credits. And there you have it, every horror movie reference that can be found in Scream 6. I want to thank my Patreon supporters Tamika Jones, Taejon C, and Kim Lapucci. If you want to see even more Scream-related content, including the horror movie references for Screams 1 to 5, you can check out this playlist right over here. Until next time, I've been Zach Cherry, and I'll be right back.